Don't you think that I could be more? Crack that stone we're saying before. Catch your breath and start to transform. On our own, we're breaking our door. Don't you think that I could be more? Crack that stone we're saying before. Catch your breath and start to transform. On our own, we're breaking our door.
Pass that shit, homie.
You're out, Norman.
You can't do this to me. I started this sesh. Do you know how much I spent on this weed?
Couldn't be much. This is mid as fuck.
Fuck these hops. I'll buy my own weed.
I would like to purchase your finest loud.
Check this shit out. It's
called
called Goblin
Goblin
Gas.
What did you put in the... I'm tweaking.
And that is what we like to call Willem Dafoe's finest performance as an actor.
As a meme edit.
Won him many Oscars.
Yeah.
His performance of Goblin Gas.
Of another successful office blunt rotation. That's the full name of the film.
Yeah.
It's like 42 seconds long.
I think it's called Another Successful Office, blunt rotation.
Another successful office blunt rotation.
Yeah.
Hi!
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to our movie podcast,
Oh my
Tough
God.
Love. So, my
tough.
name is Milo. I'm Love.
Well, my real name is Jonathan.
My radio talk show host's name is Love.
Yeah, we have to add in like fart sound effects like a morning
Oh my
radio
God,
show.
the soundboard.
Yeah. Welcome back to another Tough Love. And it's like the water flushing sound effect. This just in, a new movie. Destroy reviews.
Yeah. That'll be episode 100.
Yeah. Watch out, here comes the police. They're banning this review. Too controversial.
This week on I-5, we're going to be seeing lots and lots of Spider-Man 2002,
Yeah.
directed by Sam Raimi.
Yeah, that's actually the movie we're reviewing for this first episode.
We're doing Spider-Man. Well, wait a minute. Before we talk about Spider-Man.
That was such a news anchor. Well, wait a minute.
Wait a
Hold on
minute.
there,
Before
my
we
co-star.
jump
Before we
in.
jump right in.
All right. You, Jonathan.
Hi.
What are your qualifications to talk about movies?
I get really angry.
Which really differentiates
Yeah.
us from every other fucking...
Yeah, I'm the angry one and you're the nice one. What a dynamic duo that's never been thought of. No,
Dude
so...
who's angry about movies.
Yeah, shit. So my qualifications are, I'm really analytical when it comes to, like, art and, like, just generally most things. I really break down the nitty-gritty and, like, I look up a lot of stuff and I know just, like, a lot of incoherent random facts about movies, just, like, assimilating them over time. I also really enjoy movies and I have a good collection of them, and, like, my whole life has basically just been watching movies and sleeping with like the odd occasional job between. So really my qualifications is I've seen so many movies so many times and I just am really able to nitpick.
Bless you.
There you go.
I think that's great.
What was that?
I think that's great.
Oh, okay. I think you're great.
Oh, I love you.
Oh, thank you. Anyways, what are your qualifications to review movies, Milo?
My qualifications are that I'm studying theater
And you're easily
and I'm
pleased.
20 years old. Therefore, I think I deserve a platform.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if that's not just the God honest truth of we're 20 and we feel like we deserve our voice on the image.
We have the ability to record ourselves talking, and by God,
We are gonna. We did it for a YouTube channel for gaming, and now we're doing it for movies.
yeah, don't even worry about it.
Yeah, Jesus.
So, we, this week, as our first episode, we're watching, we did watch, and we're going to be talking about Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man film.
Yes.
And I know, everyone's got comic book fatigue right now. Everyone's got the burnout from the comic book movies. But
Yeah.
I feel like this movie is definitely an exception. This movie does not, like, when you watch it, you're not going, oh wow, this is just like all the other comic book movies. Like, this is of its own.
Yeah, and
era.
this is like the beginning of like really Marvel superhero, because like Iron Man is what started like the whole new thing, but that was in 2008. This was 6 years before that.
Yeah, this
like,
is its own real league.
And like superhero movies had existed beforehand. You know, like fucking like Batman existed since the 60s. It was a TV show, then it was a Tim Burton production, I'm pretty sure, with Michael Keaton.
Yeah,
or maybe not
I don't
Tim
know
Burton,
if that was
but
Tim Burton did.
He did
work
one
on it, but I don't
yeah.
know if that was after this.
I don't
Spider-Man
remember,
movie.
but like there had been other superhero movies, like Superman, obviously, like super famous, and like
It was
There
a
probably-
genre, but the age of the Marvel, the MCU was just
Domination.
barely like a wink in
Yeah.
Stan Lee's eye.
yeah, well,
A
I mean, think
twinkle
about
in his
this:
eye.
the fucking Batman movies, the Batman trilogy that like it was super famous, came out like the first movie came out like 3 years after this in like 2005.
Yeah.
Like Batman Begins came out like 3 years after this. So like if you take the two like visuals of that movie, like this is like so campy and like and like goofy, straight out of like the 90s. Like this is what you would think of as a comic book movie if you weren't like a comic book fan. You were just like, oh, a comic book movie? It's probably gonna be goofy and campy.
Yeah.
You know? But then like 2005 when Batman came out, like that gritty fucking Christopher Nolan shit, like that completely changed people's perceptions. And then Iron Man came out
Yeah.
after like
Which
that
sort
trilogy.
of halves
Yeah,
that
slice right in the middle, which I think was the really good thing, because I think, well, I guess I'll tell this when we get to the review part. A little cliffhanger. I'll come back to that. And instead, I will inevitably forget.
Yeah, so I was thinking a lot about what movie I wanted us to do for our first episode, because there's so much pressure, you know? Like, I wanted it to be something iconic. I wanted it to be one of the Titans, but I also didn't want it to be something so serious that we were just going to be, like, really getting into some heavy analytical shit. Some really dense, I don't know. I wanted it to be something that is, like, very beloved from my childhood and something we could talk about. And I think for this podcast, this is a perfect start, because we're going to be aiming to talk about films that are really, like, culturally important.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
we're gonna be doing like whole entire series, like all the Jurassic Parks, all the Star Wars, all the Indiana Jones, all the fucking Godfathers.
I won't promise anything, but that's our
That's
our
our
idea.
that's our hope.
But the thing is, we're also going to be doing movies that are, as those examples may have demonstrated, culturally important to us.
Yeah.
Specifically as, you know, college age students and like Gen Z.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's gonna be very much what we perceive to be the most culturally significant film, which might not be objectively true. And that's also why we're doing kind of stuff that's nostalgic for us. Like, this movie came out the fucking year that I was born. So, like,
Yeah.
this is very much my childhood, my, like, growing up on this
Yeah.
and this era of film. So, I think we should just jump right into it. So, the structure of this is going to go... Jonathan will have 5 minutes on the clock to just go, and he's gonna say everything
Whatever I
he
want.
thinks about this movie, and then it's gonna be my turn, and I'm gonna have 5 minutes to just go, and we're gonna give this movie some tough love.
Oh my god. I hate you.
Okay, are you ready to tell me about this movie for 5 minutes?
Oh fuck. Maybe. Yes.
Okay, go.
Okay, so shit. What I was gonna say is I think that this movie holds a really good, important middle ground, or a very good beginning. What I was talking about with the Tim Burton, Christopher Nolan Batmans is that they were really gritty, And this came out in 2002. Then Christopher Nolan Batman came out in 2005 and continued. And then Iron Man came out in 2008. And I think this, along with like Fantastic Four and a few other movies that came out in the early 2000s that were done by Marvel, were really cheesy and campy.
Yes.
And while that was fun, it definitely was like pushing out a large selection of audience. And then the Christopher Nolan Batmans came out where it's like, oh shit, dark, gritty, real, no CGI superhero movies are really like popular. And then I feel like that came into Iron Man, because if you watch Iron Man, a lot of it's shot like a horror movie. Anyways, just I thought that was a really good middle ground where Iron Man is like this movie and Batman put together.
Yeah.
But this movie, I love this movie. I love Spider-Man. It's the original. It's the OG. This is what I think of when I think of the beginning of Marvel. I think of these three movies, but specifically this one. The plot really hits all the beats that you would expect it to in a superhero movie. You know, like hero becomes the hero, villain becomes the villain, then they battle, then they don't, then they battle. Tough choice of the hero defeats the villain, sad ending or melancholy ending. But I'm pretty sure this is the first movie to really make that like a stereotype. Like this movie hits all the beats, but I feel like it really created those beats.
At least for like our generation, or
yes. However, it's not your time.
Yes.
Yes. So the whole synopsis of the movie is just like a little thing. It's a superhero movie based on Spider-Man. It's directed by Sam Raimi. Literally, it just follows Peter Parker's adventure in becoming Spider-Man and then fighting the Green Goblin. So what I really, really like about this is the beginner, the opening. It opens with credits. Like that was a big thing I loved as a kid, was that when movies opened with credits, they would like make them interesting. You know, now with Marvel, you gotta sit through blank credits that have nothing except for like a photo or like a quick video, all the way to the end to watch some teaser for a movie you're probably not gonna see. You know, but in this, like they had like spiderweb visuals and like blue and red colors, the Green Goblin's mask becoming like a blueprint. Like they had Spider-Man swinging around, and they made the credits really fun, and like they built up the movie of like, oh shit, I'm gonna watch Spider-Man, you know, and fucking my god, like Tobey Maguire, truly the best Peter Parker, and an okay Spider-Man, I would say. He doesn't quip a lot. He's kind of. We'll get into that, but I really love him as Peter Parker, and I think Ben Parker, Uncle Ben, who is played by Cliff Robertson, amazing. The most iconic Uncle Ben, you know, and we have theories about that. But I gotta say that the middle of the movie, there are parts of it that get a little slow. That's my biggest gripe, is that the movie kind of slows down at some points compared to new Marvel movies. Like in a lot of new movies, it's not a lot of action. Like, and the choreography for the fighting is a little goofy. But the thing is that it really takes time to build up these characters, and it takes time away from the action, because a lot of people didn't know what Spider-Man was really about. You know? Like, this is people's, really the first introduction to Marvel superhero movies.
1 minute.
Okay. And I think for the time it was brought out, it's amazing. I mean, there's a reason it's got 4.7 stars on just like the Google review. Critics rated it like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience score is bombed, but that's because a lot of people have come after watching Spider-Verse or the
No Way Home.
No Way Home.
Yeah. And
review bombed it because it's a lot of new people looking back at this movie from when they were literally born and were like one, and they're like, this sucks because it's not like the Marvel I know.
Yeah.
When this is the OG.
Yeah.
And so that's also another gripe of mine that I'll get into. But I have 15 seconds. Big fan. I love Uncle Ben. Movie's a little slow. Action's a little gross. But all in all, I think it is one of the best superhero movies I've ever watched. Period. End of story.
That's great.
And that's my 5.
That's your 5. That was perfect.
5 seconds. I was like 0.2 seconds over.
I
edit it out. Clip me.
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
think that's all very awesome and very fair.
All right, I will start your 5 minutes now. Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Oh, I missed. Wait. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, I agree with you completely. I love this movie. It's part of why I chose it, is because it's so nostalgic for me, like I was saying. I also really agree that, like, this does hit all the beats, especially because it is a lot of people's first introduction. It's a Spider-Man origin story, and it is everything I would want out of a Spider-Man origin story. Like, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst is her name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both of their performances are so... like they make these characters and they really make this movie. And obviously, like, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin is like fucking phenomenal, like such a great choice. And I agree that, like, the level of sort of corniness and, like, cheesiness that comes with this movie is also, like, a big part of its charm, is that it's not taking itself too seriously.
Yeah.
Which is, like, a quintessential Spider-Man thing, is
Yes.
that it can't be a Spider-Man story that takes itself super seriously.
Yes.
So, I fucking love this movie. I think that, ultimately, this movie is like a romance, and the beginning narration definitely frames it that way, where literally the opening lines are basically Peter Parker saying, like, you know, just like any good story, this story starts with a girl. And it's like he is framing his own origin story around Mary Jane.
Yes.
Which I think is really, like, an awesome choice, because, like, I really appreciate their dynamic in this movie, and I think I had forgotten completely the fact that they're high schoolers at the beginning of this. Like, I remember in the second and third movie in this series that, like, they're in college and MJ is acting and Peter's working for the Daily Bugle, and I had completely forgotten that they start off as seniors in high school.
Yeah!
Which was so funny to me. But, like, they really sell it. And I believe them. I believe their, like, performances as high schoolers. But, like, then all of the beats of this film are about Peter is doing what he's doing, because he loves MJ and because he wants to be with her, and, like, everything down to, like, the first time he discovers he has powers is because he's catching her from falling and catching her lunch in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And, like, the first time he creates the Spider-Man persona is because he wants to win money in a boxing match so he can buy a car to impress her. Like, it's such a perfect, like, teenage, like, brooding, angsty, but also, like, really love-struck teenager. And I think that's the other big thing that this movie hits on, is the feeling of transitioning out of high school and into college, and how that works in tandem with Peter Parker discovering that he is Spider-Man and, like, figuring out his powers for the first time. I think that, like, there's a lot of stuff in there about, like, this is the time when you're becoming the man you're gonna be for the rest of your life and all this shit. And I think that's, like, he's becoming Spider-Man, and the feelings of, like, that he's really nervous and he's really, like, trying to figure it out and trying to get a hold of it and figure out, what type of hero am I? Am I someone who kills people, or, like, you know, am I someone who just kind of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? And then the feeling of, like, fuck, my whole life is changing. I'm graduating high school. Like, I have to be an adult now, and I'm, like, really having to figure my shit out in a huge way. It's just, like, such a real feeling. And the only thing that I really, really wish this movie had is I wish we would see him making the suit, because we never see him make the Spider-Man suit, and I think that's a big, big issue.
Yes,
with this film.
I think that is. He just kind of gets it.
Yeah.
And there's also, like, weird. Sorry, not my turn.
Yeah, but I think that is the one thing that I just wish and desire so badly, is to watch this fucking dorky kid, like, sewing in his room, just like a sewing machine montage. I think that would be just the icing on the cake. And then the only other thing I want to say is
You have 10 seconds.
I know. I fucking love Danny Elfman. I'm kind of a Danny Elfman fanatic, and he did the soundtrack for this movie, and I think it truly makes this film what it is. And that's my time.
Oh, that's your time.
Okay.
All right.
That's
There we
good.
go.
That's good. We're at a really good. We agree on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I think this had a similar impact on our lives as a
Yes.
film, but there's a lot more that
Yeah.
we need to talk about. Okay, so now I have a
Hello.
few discussion questions that I would like to ask you. First of all, actually, let me just say, quips in this movie, kind of weak.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of weak. Not
A sad amount.
a lot of Spider-Man quips. The total quip count is 5
I think that's 6, but we'll go into that.
for the whole film. The first one is, "That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?"
No!
Which is, come on.
No, Peter!
Peter Parker, you are not being an ally right now.
You are being sad and awful.
The second quip is, "You know who I am. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man."
Yeah,
Which is barely a quip.
yeah, barely.
even, But, a little bit sassy.
Oh, sassy frass.
The third quip is, "Hey kiddo, why don't you let mom and dad talk?"
He's talking
That's-
to JJ.
That's a good quip.
Yeah.
Wholesome quip. 5 out of 5 quips for on the quip scale.
Wow.
The fourth quip is, "Not coming back, Chief," when he goes into the burning building.
Yeah.
And then the last one is, "It's you who's out, Gobby. Out of your mind."
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the best quip. That's pretty
That's a
hard.
banger.
I don't think Gobby's gonna come back from that one. Okay, so my first question for you
Okay.
is Mary Jane Watson a B-word?
Yes. Absolutely. I think she is one of the worst people. Okay, just by the way, I've got 11 pages of notes on my Google Doc. So, anyways. So, here's the thing. I think that Mary Jane in the comics, which I know enough about, pretty good. I know a pretty good amount of the comics. Mary Jane has flip-flopped a lot in the comics, but she's always Spidey's best girl. She's always she says tiger, she's always the sassy hottie, red hair, very consistent. She's also very consistently a good person. However, in this movie, I'm gonna read a little bit of a thing to you. All right. So here's my synopsis of why MJ is the worst person ever. MJ dates Flash while knowing he's an asshole, then breaks up with him at graduation and gives him his ring back. Whatever that means. I take it to be they were engaged or they were wearing promise rings. Which means that at graduation, she broke off an engagement with this guy. Then immediately, at that same graduation, talks to Harry, and some point during that time, they hook up. Maybe not at the graduation, but very soon after. After she just broke off maybe an engagement. Alright?
Red flag.
Yeah. Then, while with Harry, she gets saved by Spider-Man one time. And let me refer to you this. In that same scene, Harry goes to save her. He goes to save her, and he gets hit in the head with a boulder. With a rock.
Yeah.
And he doesn't die from that, even though it's the concrete is the size of his head. So he does try, right?
Yeah, this is during the first appearance of Goblin during the big parade.
Well, not first appearance, but it's
his first tussle with Spider-Man.
Yeah. And after being saved once by Spider-Man, and then getting dropped off on a roof, she falls in love with him. Literally falls in love with him to the point where she's calling her boyfriend Harry and telling him how amazing he is. And how cool and awesome. And then, right then, a scene later, she fails on an audition. Bombs. And then sees and Peter and her kind of talk a little bit, and she asks Peter to come on a date with her
This is
With-
this is later. This is
Yeah.
after the second time, or right before the second time that he saves her. And she... Is it right after she bombed the audition?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
She comes out of the audition and she's like, a rom-com told me to take acting lessons.
Oh, yeah.
And then she asks Peter to come on a dinner she was going to have with Harry. So she's going on a date with Harry that night and invites Peter to come. Then makes it really obvious that their relationship isn't going well. She asks him, why do you think it's not your business to know how my relationship is going? Then asks why he's so interested, and then baits him into admitting that he likes her. All in the span of like 3 sentences while giving him fuck me eyes. Then immediately after that, she runs into an alley and almost gets gang raped.
Yeah, that scene aged really
Really
badly.
poorly. And then she gets saved by Spidey and then goes and kisses him. She kisses Spider-Man, doesn't know who he is. He could have fucking chlamydia. He also could be like 80. Like, she doesn't know anything about him. And he says, wait. But she still pulls down his mask and kisses him.
From her perspective right now, she's about to go on a date with her boyfriend. She's hitting on her best friend. And then she's going and kissing Spider-Man.
All in the span of like 5 minutes. And then they have there's a few scenes, and then they have Thanksgiving dinner together. And Harry and Norman get into a fight, and like Norman is like all Green Goblin mode, so like he's being really mean and being like, she's a bitch who just wants your money. It was just like your mother, you know. But Harry during that entire scene sticks up for MJ. But he's not yelling, so they can't hear through the door. When he enters the room, he comes back in. MJ says, thanks for sticking up for me, and then storms off to Peter's room. To go to Peter's
she
room.
leaves,
No, she goes up the stairs. He's blocking the door.
Are you sure?
Harry's blocking the door because he's in the kitchen. And she goes upstairs, which is where Peter and Harry sleep. So I'm pretty sure she would not be going to Harry's room, which means that she was going to Peter's room to hide from Harry.
Well, she leaves and says, sorry, Aunt May. She puts on her trench coat and walks out the door.
Yes, but
out the front
she
door.
goes up the stairs. Then Harry is like, what did you say? Like, what did you heard that? And she's like, yeah, everyone heard that, creep.
Oh, yeah.
And then Harry gets angry because he just defended her from his father, which took a lot of guts because he and his father have a really terrible relationship. And she didn't hear what he said, just assumed that he trashed her with his father or didn't stick up for her. And then when he gets upset because she's attacking him in this very emotional position, she then immediately like fucking chews him out, you know? And then she leaves. Then, later on, Aunt May gets attacked by the Green Goblin and ends up in the hospital. Peter goes to see his aunt, and in the same room as them, MJ comes in and is like, hey Peter, how's Aunt May? Oh, she's okay? Alright. I'm in love with another guy. She fully says, she tells Peter she is in love with someone else other than Harry, reveals it's Spider-Man, someone she doesn't know, and then she holds Peter's hands really lovingly while he describes her what he said to Spider-Man. Basically, like, he's like, oh, this is what I actually think of you, but I'm saying it like, oh, me, Peter Parker, told Spider-Man this. And that's what makes Spider-Man love you, but it's actually me loving you. Which, Peter was a fucking creep in that scene. Where he's, like, emotionally manipulating this poor girl, too. But she's also a terrible person, so she kind of deserves it. Everyone's very emotionally manipulative in this movie. But then, Harry comes in the room, in the hospital room, which meanwhile, like, MJ and Peter are having this conversation while fucking Aunt May is dead ass in the bed, like, recovering from an explosion. And Harry comes in and sees them holding hands, and then MJ makes it really awkward. So then Peter makes it awkward. But MJ is the one who breaks away and looks at Harry and then acts really ashamed. While Peter's like, I don't know what just happened.
Yeah.
So it's very clear that Peter was just trying to be, like, friendly or something. But MJ was really trying to have, like, him reveal, like, some feelings or something. And then she gets saved by Spider-Man again and has incredible reflexes, by the way, and catches a fucking like, trolley cart while falling, like, 50 feet in the air and doesn't snap her wrists, which, insane. But then, by the end of the movie, they're at Norman Osborn's funeral. Harry's father. Harry is now MJ's ex. They broke up, like, right after his father died. And then at his funeral, at Norman Osborn's funeral, Harry's father, she tells Peter that she thought of him when she was about to die, tells him she loves him, kisses him at the funeral of her ex's father, and then when he tells her no and he just wants to be friends, has a fucking meltdown. She cries and blubbers and doesn't know how it could have happened. It's so, like, this bitch is insane, and I hate her, and I hate the way she's portrayed, because Mary Jane in the comics really sticks up for herself. Like, at one point she, like, beats the shit out of her dad for being abusive. In this movie, they're just like, what can we do so she fucks Flash, she fucks Harry, she tries to fuck Spider-Man, and then she fucks Peter. Or she tries to fuck Peter. Like, this bitch goes around to any guy who she can meet and, like, just, like, hooks up, and it, like, literally wrote her in to just, like, fill character gaps. Like, she doesn't have a character. She's just like, I want to be an actor, but I work as a waitress, and, I don't know, we'll make her date every guy. And I think that's a really terrible portrayal of MJ. I think MJ is a wonderful character, and she's, like, the main interest of Spidey, and they made her this, like, crazy wacko girl. And I hate it. I hate it so much. I got whiny. I hate it! But yeah, so that's my hot take, is I think MJ is terrible in this movie.
I disagree with you so hard, dude.
But you disagree with me because you think that, while MJ does all this stuff, it's, like, cute. I think it's predatory. We interpret the things I just said very differently.
No, I mean, I'm not defending a lot of her actions. Like, I think she does some... I think the most fucked up thing that she does is that conversation where she invites Peter to go...
On a date with
her. and then he's like, no, that's none of my business. Like, that's not for me to be part of.
A very normal response.
I don't need to know about that. And she's like, well, why aren't you interested? Well, why would it be your business? And it's like, girl, that is fucked up. That is so, like, he is trying so hard to say the right thing in this situation.
And you're making it so uncomfortable.
And you are hella, like, baiting him. I definitely don't apologize for that. I don't defend that. I don't claim that. And I think that
not my MJ.
Yeah, I think, it's fair to say that she is definitely, like, the timing with the Aunt May thing is also not...
And the funeral scene.
I disagree about the funeral a little bit.
I think that's... You think it would be okay if your father died and then your ex tried to ask out your best friend at that funeral? You think that's okay?
I will defend that, yes. I will defend that.
Alright. Defend it. You are on trial with me.
I defend it because I think that it is a very overwhelmingly emotional time, and I think that sometimes when emotions are really high like that, it can sometimes feel like the only chance you have to say something. And I think in her mind, she is, like, realizing a lot of shit about, like, they're reflecting on Norman Osborn, and she thought he was a terrible person, and she's probably realizing that, like, Harry had a lot of the same traits. But regardless, the main thing is that she's reflecting on the fact that she almost died, and I think what she says is true, that, like, Peter is the last thing that she thought of, and the only person that's really been there for her. And she really feels like, with how crazy the last, like, few months have been, that's what she really needs, is that one person who's really consistently there for her and kind to her and supportive of her. And she's realizing all of this in this really emotional time, and she's just like, if I don't say this now, I'm never going to be able to tell him. And so she pulls him aside. It's not like this happens like in front of everyone and in front of Harry. Like, Harry's left the chat. He went home. He says, "Fuck Spider-Man. I'm gonna go kill his ass." And then
thanks, Peter.
literally
And then
leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is not even on the premises anymore.
Of the graveyard, yeah.
So I think, yes, you know, if Harry were there, this would be a lot sketchier. But the fact that she knows he's gone and they've left the area of the funeral, they're in a different part of the graveyard at Ben Parker's grave. Still, it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to confess my love in front of your uncle's grave. Like, I get it, but I will defend her action of, to me, the heartfeltness, like the heartfelt quality of her speech towards Peter, I think really gives me the impression that she's like, I have to tell him now.
But here's the thing, is that throughout the entire movie, she's constantly baiting him into trying to admit that he likes her. And she knows that he likes her. And she wants him to, like, tell her that he likes her.
Yeah.
And that's throughout the entire movie. MJ is just moderately human decency, like basic human decency from MJ. And that's what makes them love interests, is because she's the only one that shows him, like, the bare minimum of kindness.
I completely disagree, especially with what you're saying about that she has no character in this movie.
I think she does have character. I think her character just whips around from thing to thing to fit different scenes and different motifs. But as one character, she doesn't make sense. She bounces around everywhere.
I completely disagree with you. I think that she and Peter are the heart of this movie, and she is especially the heart of this movie. And I think her character is incredibly strong in this film. And like, I think that she has problematic behaviors, but I think Peter can fix her. And I think.
But that's
should.
fucked up. That's fucked up that you're expecting Peter to enter into a relationship that he knows will be initially toxic, and then put all the work into fixing her.
No, I'm just saying that he can fix her thing.
Yes, but that's the thing, is that he shouldn't have to fix her. She should get her shit together and then come at him in a reasonable way where she's ready for a relationship. Because she dates the biggest asshole in high school, then she dates someone that she doesn't even love just to get Peter's attention.
I don't know if that's true.
I feel like
what evidence do you have for that?
She's baiting Peter while actively in a relationship with Harry because she knows that Harry.
I believe that she loved him, though. Like, I believe
initially,
she was into him.
But I feel like it's the same thing with Flash, where she likes Harry's money in a way, and I think what Norman says about her is slightly true.
I could not disagree more. I don't think that fits her at all.
The MJ that I know in the comics is very different from this MJ, and so I have a very high standard of what MJ should look like.
Sure.
So I think that is why I am being so harsh, and I think she does have good character development. I do think she becomes a better person by the end of the movie, but she goes from trash to garbage. She doesn't go from, like, bad person to good person.
I will also say that I think I respect her decision to date whoever she wants, however many guys she wants to date.
Yeah, I do too.
Like, that's not a bad thing for any woman to do.
But I think the way that she goes about dating people is really toxic. I think she is a very toxic individual, and compared to the comics, that is very upsetting to me. And I think that the way they made her toxic makes it a lot more like MJ is toxic rather than people around her are toxic, which influences MJ. MJ herself is just a bad person in this movie. She does good things and she has good character development, but she's a bad person throughout, and she never changes being a bad person in this movie or the next, or even the third.
So I also think that, like, what I was saying about that she needs Peter, who is a really stable and grounding and supportive person, I think that plays into it a lot, where the fact that she is sort of bouncing in between relationships and is maybe a little bit unhealthy with how she interacts with those men, and like she's a little bit volatile. I think, of course, that can be like directly related to her awful abusive father. A lot of times when people have abusive parents, they have a really hard time like forming healthy relationships, and I think this is no different. But I also think that like Peter is so like one of the things that really I think drives this movie and is like really moving is how dedicated he is to her and how all he wants is to make her happy. And I find all of their interactions, but my favorites are the ones in the backyard. The one
when he's taking out the trash.
Yeah, the one when he's taking out the trash. The one when she's in the trench coat coming off of her waitressing job and she just got off the clock. And the interaction in the hospital and the interaction at the funeral. I think all of those are really like wholesome and sweet, and they make me really happy to watch. Like, I just think that they have such this like energy of teenagers proclaiming their love to each other without actually saying it, and like how just sweet and gentle and tender they are. Like, I believe them, and the emotional, like the way that the plot is emotionally driven by those interactions is so beautiful to me. And like by the end of this movie, I really appreciate how Peter is like, all he wants in his entire life, what is like driving him as a person at this like phase in his life, is that he wants her to be happy and he wants to support her. And for him, that means like letting her go date Flash and letting her go date Harry and not making a move because he thinks that she's like, he puts her up on a pedestal and he thinks that those other guys are cooler and richer and whatever than him, and that he's just this nerdy kid. But when in reality, he's the one that she deserves all along, because she comes from this volatile household and because he is so like, he's supporting her acting. He wants to see her happy and he wants to see her thrive. And like she says, like what she says at the end about, you're the only man who's been consistently there for me. I think she's talking about like even throughout high school, because we get the sense that they sort of have interacted before. It's just she's never really noticed him in that way. So I think that like he is perfect for her, and that's what makes the ending so like it's so subversive in a way, in that he wants this girl, like he wants to be with her so badly, and in the end he has to say no to protect her. And that's another, like, that's just an extension of him sacrificing himself and what he wants because he thinks it'll make her happy. He's sacrificing being with her because he knows it could put her in danger. And I think that like is what ties this whole movie together as ultimately being a romance, as opposed to just like a comic book action movie. Like, I think ultimately this is a romance film. And I think the fact that they don't get together in the end is really, really beautiful. And I just also want to say, I fucking love how he lets her down, because he doesn't just say like, no, I don't feel the same way. What he says is like, I wish I could tell you, there's so much to tell, but what I want you to know is that I'm always, always going to be there for you, and I'm always going to be your friend. And she says, just my friend? And he says, that's all I have to give. And that is like, I don't know, man. Like, those lines are just so raw to me.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think I've heard that shit anywhere else. Like, the fact that that's all I have to give comes out of Spider-Man 2002 is just like, oh my god, like that moment, dude.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I never considered it like what you're saying. I always thought they made MJ just really, like, they were just like, okay, Flash needs a girlfriend, we'll make it MJ to fill in, like, some gaps and some seams. She gets with Harry, but, like, off the bat, they aren't happy, so that way we can create tension with Peter. Like, I always thought it was, like, they were just kind of putting her in different places to give Peter, like, obstacles to, like, kind of overcome. Where it's like, oh, she's dating Flash, but then she breaks up with Flash. Now's his chance. Nope, now it's Harry. Now Harry's with him. Oh, but how does Peter get over with his best friend? Oh, they break up because of like other reasons, because his fucking dad dies. Okay, now they can get together. I do agree though that I think the last scene at the funeral, I don't think the timing is good, and I think the way that they do that scene is like really cringy. Where it's like, you're at your fucking ex's dad's funeral. That's fucked up. But what they say, I think, is really beautiful. And I think I think I am changing my opinion on MJ. I think that, yes, I think she is actually a better character than I give her credit for.
So, this has been our MJ fan cast.
Yeah, this has been our MJ debacle where my opinion has changed. I think she is a much better person than before, but I still think she's very bad. And I wish that they had made MJ more like the comics. And I'm definitely probably coming off as a neckbeard, but whatever, because I love MJ. I just really don't like the way they did her dirty in this film. But I think it's a lot better. Handshake.
Yeah, I think this is a great. I've heard your point, and you have heard mine.
And we definitely didn't edit out like 30 minutes of us fighting and knocking over shit
and breaking teeth.
Yeah, you can't tell right now, but I just went back to the dentist to get my dentures because my teeth got knocked in by a baseball bat.
No MJ slander in my house.
Yeah. But that's our MJ thing.
So
other stuff.
I think that to quickly also put a pin on it is I think MJ and Harry are both low-key bad people because of their
toxic,
horrible abusive dads.
Yes.
There are a couple other things that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
But do you want to talk about Uncle Ben?
Yes.
All right.
So, kind of a meme theory.
Kind of a crack theory.
But also, I just want to rant about Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
I love Uncle Ben. I think Uncle Ben is one of the greatest characters in any Marvel piece ever, period. I love, and this is controversial, but I love to just watch the Uncle Ben giving Peter the lesson and dying. Like, it happens in every Spider-Man ever, and, like, it's been memed to death that it's, like, a new Uncle Ben just to be killed off, you know? It's like, we cast Patrick Stewart to be, like, Uncle Ben for 2 minutes, you know? Like, they get a really huge actor to do, like, a 2-minute role that everyone knows is gonna die. But I really love what he represents. Because Peter is growing up without parents. He has his aunt and uncle, but his aunt and uncle are, like, in their 60s. Like, Aunt May is, like, in her 70s. Like, they're probably both reaching their 70s.
It makes me kind of wonder how, like, older they are than his parents.
I think his parents would be, like, in their 50s.
Yeah.
And so I think it was one of those things where, like, their parents had, like, Peter's grandparents had Aunt May and had Uncle Ben really young, and then, like, later on, once, like, Uncle Ben was, like, in, like, high school, they had another kid who was Peter's father.
Yeah.
Because that's the relation, is Aunt May is married into the family.
Yeah.
Which I really like that Aunt May is married in, because she just seems like she's a part of the family. It doesn't seem like, oh, my in-law, you know, which I really love. I really also love Aunt May to death. I think the Aunt May and Uncle Ben casting for these movies are the best that they've ever been out of any of the movies.
They start off really strong.
Yeah.
Their dynamic with each other and with Peter.
They feel like a married couple who've been together forever.
Yeah.
You know.
And they don't really have that much screen time.
No.
Together, but it's like very memorable.
Yeah. They are an amazing couple. And the part where Uncle Ben is like, listen, Peter, we need to talk. You spent your entire summer inside your room, like, you're really mood swinging around, like, we don't mood swinging, mood swinging. Your mood is swinging around. You're, like, inventing stuff in your room. You're really secretive. We're concerned about you, and that's real.
He's like, guys, I'm just smoking weed. Chill out.
I'm just making a rig in here. What are your science experiments about? Why is there glass shattering coming from your room? I'm making a rig, Dad. Shut up.
Shut up.
Leave me alone. It's got, like, apple core bongs. Apple bongs.
Yeah.
Oh my god. But yeah. I think that the lesson, like, this is the origin of Uncle Ben. We've never seen Uncle Ben on film.
Right.
And, like, there's a reason that this Uncle Ben is my favorite, is because he's the most fleshed out. He's the most honest. He really is like, listen, Peter, I'm not worried you're going to become a criminal or anything, but, like, you're fighting at school, and, like, he's like, he doesn't punish him. I really like this. He doesn't punish him for missing the painting. He just says Michelangelo on a note.
Yeah.
Because he knows that Peter is good enough to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Which shows a lot of how much he trusts Peter. which shows why he goes from writing it on a note to intervening him by dropping him off in a car. It's because that entire summer he's gotten so different that he literally is like, I need to talk to you. You won't let me talk to you otherwise.
Yeah.
But it's because he's being like, he's like doing his own thing, you know, and he's whatever. It's his summer. But that whole scene in the car where he's like, with great power comes great responsibility. And Peter just goes, what, do you think I'm going to become a criminal? And he's like, no, I'm just saying that you're changing. And he's like, you're not my dad, leave me alone. And Uncle Ben, the way he shows that he's hurt, but he's like, you're right, I'm sorry, I'm overstepping. Really? Like, that hurts me so much.
Oh my God.
Seeing any old person sad is like, it gets me going.
Yeah.
But seeing an old person sad and then knowing they're gonna die, devastating.
You know what? Okay, what hurts the most about Uncle Ben, and we'll get to the theory.
Yeah.
I promise.
Yeah, sorry.
But what hurts the fucking most is knowing that he was sitting in the car waiting to pick up Peter.
Yeah.
Because
And that's why he got killed.
To me, when I when I have left my parent waiting in the car to pick me up from something, and I come into the car and they've been waiting for like 20 minutes, I have never felt more like an evil piece of shit garbage.
But he waits for hours.
Yeah.
In downtown New York. Like till it's midnight. And he doesn't know where Peter is. He's just waiting because he's trying to be good, and you know he would have been like, I'm sorry for the... Like, he would have apologized to Peter, and Peter would have been like, it's okay, I'm an asshole. But he never gets the chance. Uncle Ben gets his car jacked, and he gets shot. And the last thing that Peter says to him is, I'm here, Uncle Ben. And the last thing he says is, Peter, and then he dies. And I think that alone really shows who Peter is, where he's like, I'm here, Uncle Ben. The way he says that, it's like, you know, he's like, I'm sorry, and he's like, the emotion that they put forward in that scene is beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's a little memey because right afterwards he gives like a huffy face and then runs down the sidewalk and then tries to catch the guy in really terrible CGI.
They don't really let him have the moment.
He just gets really angry and then that's it. And here's the thing though, is that line when I was young always struck me as like, that's really weird.
Which one?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I want to talk about
that line. To me, I mean, it's so iconic now.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, did Uncle Ben just fucking come up with that? Like, who the fuck said that? And I thought, how old is he? He's like 70. That means that during World War II, he'd be like 18 or 20. Who also fought in World War II that we know gives really incredible proverbs and platitudes? Captain America. Hear me out on this. So, World War II and Marvel was very special. Marvel became popular during World War II because of like Captain America and stuff like that. And in World War II, like Captain America had a squad called the Howling Commandos. Howling Commandos.
Good.
Yeah. And Nick Fury was a part of that.
This is not part of the theory.
No, this is.
All right.
This is. Like, Nick Fury's a part of that. Like this is a squad of, like, really important guys. And the thing is that the squad was huge. It was, like, 20 guys, and, like, half of them were known, and then there was, like, a bunch of unknown background characters. I think Uncle Ben was one of those background, background characters. I think Uncle Ben was part of the superhero squad.
Uncle Ben was a superhero!
Boom! That's the theory!
Watch out! Take that, motherfucker!
So here's the thing. He's old enough to have fought in World War II. I think he was part of the Howling Commandos, or the Leathernecks, which were two, like, big World War II squads that fought with superheroes and, like, stuff. And I think that Captain America told Ben, with great power comes great responsibility. Like, you know, like, they were fighting in, like, fucking Germany, and like they're going closer to Berlin, and maybe something happened where they lost a squad mate, and like Ben is crying, and he's like 18 or 20, and Cap comes up to him and he's like, hey, like, listen, these people's sacrifices mean more than anything because we have the power to change things, and with great power comes great responsibility. I think Cap said that to Ben, and then that stuck with Ben his entire life. Because then, like, Aunt May says he's the most responsible man he's ever known. With great power comes great responsibility. He's a very responsible man. Does he have great power? Like, maybe he got, like, kind of like the super soldier serum that Black Cat has, which was like an alternate World War II Captain American serum. So, like, maybe he was a superhero straight up, or he was just a soldier that fought with Cap, and we don't know if he did have a superhero serum in him, because, like, Cap got really old in the new movies, and we don't know if the serum still worked on him. So Cap might have been just fucking old and brittle and no superhero serum because he aged. So we don't know.
Even if Uncle Ben has superhero serum in him, his fighting days are clearly over.
Yeah.
And you can't, no matter how much serum you have in you, it's
you're old.
A point blank gunshot is gonna kind of fuck
But
you
that's
up.
the thing, is that what old dude just fucking fights a carjacker? Yeah. So I feel like the way he fights the carjacker, the way he's always responsible, and he, like, talks down in these platitudes, and he acts like Captain America in the way of, like, he's super righteous and, like, justice and all that, but he's also very, like, modest. And I think it just really screams to me that, like, Cap was his hero, or he knew Cap personally during the war, because he for sure fought in World War II. Like, that's a part of his character, at least in the comics. So I think that in this version, the very first superhero movie that Marvel really put out, I think he was meant to be like it was kind of meant to be that, like, he fought with Cap, and I that's my headcanon, is that Cap told him with great power comes great responsibility, and that's what he told Peter, and I bet Cap doesn't even remember it, or I would love to see a scene where, like, Peter says that around Cap, and then Cap's like, huh? The fuck? Where'd you pull that out of your ass? Were you in Normandy? You know, I don't know. I think that'd be fun. But that's my thing, is that Ben Parker used to be a superhero. And that's where, like, he's like, I went through the exact same thing when I was your age, and Peter and him were the same age, but he was fighting in World War II. Maybe he got the superhero serum, and that's why he's like, I know exactly what you're going through. It's because I literally got superpowers at the same age. I don't know. But that's my headcanon.
Nice.
That's my headcanon theory, that Ben Parker used to be a superhero and fought with Cap.
Nice.
There you go. You, on the other hand, think that Ben Parker should kill himself.
I think he was a superhero, and I disagree. I think it's very important that with great power comes great responsibility is a Ben Parker original, OG Ben Parker creation, trademark TM. I think it's fucked up if he got it from someone else.
Why?
But I like your general sentiment.
I think him living by something that Captain America said during, like, Nazi fighting, I think that's a pretty baller origin story for that line.
Sure.
That he held on to that for 50 years and tried to live with that, and then he passes that on to his kid right before he dies.
Okay.
I think that's pretty baller.
So my theory about the line is that in the conversation, I think he knows that Peter has superpowers, and I think he knows that because he also has or had superpowers. And what I think about the line is that they're talking about beating up Flash Thompson. That's the actual thing that he's referring to.
Yeah, they talk about it and how it wasn't cool.
Yeah, but what he already says to Peter, just because you can beat him up doesn't mean you should. Mm-hmm. So then, by saying with great power comes great responsibility, he's just sort of reiterating what he just said.
Yeah.
And what strikes me is that I don't think anyone would consider having the upper hand in a high school, like, fight great power. Calling it great power is like kind of insane. Like, I don't think anyone would say, like,
he punched a bully once.
Yeah, you fucking got in a fist fight by the lockers outside the cafeteria. That's, just remember, with great power, like, if you're ever in a situation like that where you have an insane amount of power, it's like, no. I think what he's referring to is literally the powers. Yeah. Like Peter Parker's actual superpowers. I think he knows, and I think that's what he's talking about. Because otherwise,
It
I
just
think
doesn't seem.
yeah,
It seems weird.
It seems like such an over-the-top thing to say about my kid got in a fight at school. Like, I think ultimately he does know, and he is saying, like, whatever is going on, the bigger picture of what's going on with you right now, you have to be responsible about it.
Yeah.
All right, is that it for Uncle Ben?
That's my Uncle Ben thing.
All
So
right.
we both have headcanons that he is superhero, but just different things and different reasons.
Okay, I think we have time to delve into one more character.
I want to delve into the fact, the Green Goblin,
Okay.
and just different things about him.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Let's talk about Goblin.
Okay. Actually, I want to touch on this just before. The fact that, okay, in the movie, they go on a high school field trip at the beginning, and they go to, like, the spider lab, and that's where Peter gets his powers. They are breeding the most deadly and insane spiders on the planet, and they say that they are using the most powerful electron microscope on the eastern seaboard, but they never talk about why they're making spiders and why they need the biggest electron microscope on the eastern seaboard for it.
Yeah.
They just are making spiders because they can.
They're just...
It's literally Jurassic Park.
They're just to fuck around.
Yeah, it's literally just fucking around and being like, we're going to create the most insane spiders ever, and then just study them because we can. Because we got a
so
grant from the
funny.
government.
It's
like,
so
they
funny.
never explain why they have like 50 million spiders in this fucking random university. And why do they need an electron microscope?
That's the size of the building.
Yeah, it's like the entire room is the electron microscope.
Spiders are not that small, bro.
Oh my
Unless
God.
they're like modding the DNA under the microscope.
Which, like, insane.
Yeah, it's really funny. We talked about this when we watched it, but I cannot fucking get over how funny it is that the like 3 biggest technological corporations are Spider Zone, Goblin Gas, and Hoverboard Zone, and fucking Spacesuit Zone.
Yeah, Iron Man prototype.
Like, those are the 3 corporations, really?
Corporations?
Corporations? Like, those are... What is this fucking city that they live in? That's, like, the most relevant science that's being done.
Like that's the
it's
science of the
so
early
funny.
2000s.
It's
like,
so
where are they
funny.
at technologically, dog?
Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah. Anyways.
They don't even try to be like, oh, the goblin gas is to cure cancer. Like, they don't even try.
No, it's literally to create super soldiers.
Yeah.
Like, they literally have, like, 5-star generals come in and they're like, this is the glider and here are the military applications of Goblin Gas. Which brings me to my point. The general fucking... Okay. This movie came out in 2002. That's a year after 9/11. Like, one of America's greatest tragedies. Here's the thing. The Green Goblin then goes and kills the, like, okay, in a later scene, Goblin comes and to Quest Industries, where they're testing this Iron Man suit prototype, which the general gave funding to away from Oscorp, and told Norman he was going to do that if Norman didn't get like a successful prototype, which he didn't. So then he transferred his funding over to Quest, which is designing like a prototype Iron Man suit. The Goblin kills 5 top-star generals, all of which are 5-star generals, 2 major scientists of Quest Industries, a military pilot that's one of the best, or at least they claim, and a bunch of technicians. And the government never freaks out about it. This is a year after 9/11, and 5-star generals are blown up on American soil a year later by an unknown explosion, and the most that's referenced out of it is that the head of the Oscorp board is like, after the bombing, our company's stock went down.
Okay, so Goblin. Green Goblin.
Gas.
I think that he, after he's exposed to the Goblin Gas, I don't think that he is ever Norman again except when he is talking to himself in his house, which I think are fucking
Those scenes, the mirror
pinnacles.
scenes. Oh,
pinnacles of
Yes.
acting. Like the scene where Norman is crawling towards the mask, like in
Yeah.
front of the fireplace.
That gave me a boner. I won't lie. That was sexually charged. That was a sexually charged scene.
I think that is like the most compelling part of
The entire movie.
the movie, or at least like that is the most
Quintessential.
compelling Norman Goblin moment.
Yeah.
And I think that like the Goblin, him sort of having this other personality that comes out of him and takes control of him as a result of the Goblin Gas is, I think, it's just that like Green Goblin is just a like exacerbation of personality traits that he definitely already has.
Yeah.
Like, I think he was already a pretty shitty and evil person.
Yes. It's just he
And-
never acted upon those.
Yeah.
I mean, literally the line where he's like, back to formula, and he's upset when the generals are there, to literally back to formula, and then he kills the guy.
Yeah.
Pretty clear indication of, like, it's an exaggerated form of Norman Osborn.
Yeah. He's always been fucked up. And, like, something that really stands out to me is the lines where he's on the roof with Peter, and Peter is just like waking up from the sleep gas, and he's giving this speech, and basically he says like that masses of people exist only to lift up like the exceptional few.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think that sums up Norman Osborn's character. Like, I think that's how he really feels. Like, that's barely even a Green Goblin moment.
Yeah.
Him being like, the working class exists for my benefit, basically. It's like, I'm like, yeah, dude, that's some just CEO shit. Like, he definitely held those viewpoints and beliefs already.
Yes. I agree 100%. I think that there are scenes where Norman is back. I think though that they are very few. Like I think it is really Norman Osborn. Like obviously at the beginning of the movie before he becomes Green Goblin. And I think it's Norman Osborn when he's like back in his home and he's like, what? Someone was murdered, you know?
Yes, I think that is Norman.
And I think it's Norman when he's like on the phone and he's like talking to Peter and Harry and like their apartment, you know? Like when he's just doing like mundane shit. I think though that towards the end of the movie, literally the elevator scene where he's like rolling his eyes and he's all sweaty and twitchy, is he's having an active fight of who is going to go to the Thanksgiving dinner, Goblin or Norman. And I think Norman wins, but it's like a much harsher version of Norman. And then by the end of the movie, like it's all Goblin until the last line when he's killed and he goes, "Don't tell Harry."
Yeah.
Which that
I think
that
Don't
line.
Tell Harry is Norman.
But I think everything up on like the Thanksgiving scene is Norman, but it's like evil Norman. So it's like there's Norman, Green Goblin, evil Norman in the middle, and I think that's like you see his transition from Norman most of the time to evil Norman to then just full on Green Goblin until he dies.
Well, if he's evil Norman, quote unquote, wouldn't that just mean that that's the Goblin?
No, I think it's Norman with Goblin traits. I think Norman Osborn and Green Goblin are two very separate entities, but the Green Goblin is just like Norman Osborn's personality set to the most dramatic scale.
I think that he is only Norman when he's exhibiting genuine fear. So when he's talking to the mask or talking to himself in the mirror, I think that's clearly a conversation between Norman and Goblin. Like, that's no debate.
Obviously, yeah.
And I agree in the beginning when they're saying so-and-so was killed and the glider was stolen. And he's like, what the fuck? I think that was Norman. But I think every other interaction, graduation, Thanksgiving, conversations with Harry about, oh, who's your new girlfriend? I think all of those interactions are Goblin. Every single one.
Really?
Yeah. Because this is going to get dark, but I do think that Norman would, if he were in control, probably kill himself. Because at this point, Goblin's already committed a series of extremely heinous crimes that Norman obviously knows about. And I believe the implication is that the Goblin set the building on fire. That apartment complex. So he set that building on fire. He killed all of the Oscorp board members. He's killed many people through collateral damage and bombings and fire and all this shit. And I think Norman, knowing all of that, if he did regain control, I think he's fucking terrified of the Goblin. And I think that he probably would not allow... I think he would take himself out.
I think it's Stockholm Syndrome, though. Because in a lot of other areas, like, Norman relies on the Goblin to take care of him because he just like ends up like devolving so much, where he's just like the Goblin takes care of him and like makes things right, and like he genuinely thinks that some people deserve what they got, and I think that it's literal Stockholm Syndrome, where he's relied on the Goblin to take care of him, that he is in control. But, like, at certain points, he'll give up control to Goblin willingly, or it's taken from him, and he relies on the Goblin to solve things that he can't. I don't think he would kill himself.
The thing is that Norman... I mean... every quote-unquote Norman interaction that he has is still extremely manipulative.
Yeah.
And fucking, like, downright evil. Like, at graduation, when he is talking to Peter, he's manipulating him because he knows he just lost a father figure. And so he's immediately trying to step in as a father figure in order to manipulate him.
But I think that's something that Norman would do. I don't think the Green Goblin... What would the Green Goblin have to gain out of that?
I guess that's true.
Like, most of the... Like, why would the Green Goblin gain anything from going to his son's apartment to make a phone call on business and just check in on his kid and like, Harry, and see how they're doing? I think Norman is very much alive. And I think Norman does the day-to-day stuff. It's just that, like, towards the end of the movie, after that Thanksgiving scene, there is no Norman anymore. Mm-hmm. Because literally Harry comes home to him, like, laughing by himself.
Yeah.
And you don't hear, like, any switch or anything. It's just, ha, ha. And then he just comes down the stairs and is like, what's up? No, like, I know I've done so much to you and I've damaged you a lot.
Yeah.
I think that is Norman. But I think Norman and Goblin are now interchangeable. Like, there's no Norman fighting the Goblin for control or something like that, like there was in the elevator. I think it is simply Goblin was there, and then he allowed Norman to come back, or was impersonating Norman and was saying things that, like, he and Norman wanted to say together. You know, like, the Green Goblin is saying it for bad reasons, but Norman is saying it for good reasons, but it's coming out of, you know, the guy's mouth at the same time.
That's really interesting, because I think that lends itself to his death at the very end, because it's kind of debatable whether or not he's being Norman when he's saying, "No, Peter, it's me."
And you're like, be a son to me. I was like a father to you.
Yeah.
I think that is Norman. I think that is just Norman at his base
Can
level.
I finish?
Sorry, yes.
Because I think what you're saying really lends itself to that, in that he's saying those words, but he's moving his hand toward the button that will make the glider impale Peter. And so I think what you're saying, that they sort of become one entity, is like, that probably is Norman's, like, true feelings, but the Goblin is letting him say that because he knows it'll distract Peter, while the Goblin is still in control of his body and his hands.
It's letting him talk, but it's not... Goblin's in control of the body, while Norman's in control of his mouth.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's what I think of. Mm-hmm. I think that, like once after that Thanksgiving dinner, they are one person. The Green Goblin and Norman are one thing, and they just kind of, like, swap out at different times. Like, I think that whole interaction between Harry and Norman at the stairs is Norman and the Green Goblin at the same time. Mm-hmm. And Norman's saying it because he really does feel like he let his son down, and the Goblin's saying it to manipulate Harry closer.
Yeah.
And I think that when Norman is giving that speech where he's like, please, like, save me. Mm-hmm. I think that is Norman, but I think Goblin's actively trying to kill Spider-Man still.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. This is kind of like a different thing, but like Norman is shown to really take risks and not think about the consequences. And he literally lines up his glider to stab Spider-Man while Spider-Man is in front of him. If Spider-Man moves, he will be killed.
Right, he could have had the
Glider coming from the
side.
Right? I think that's intentional.
Yeah.
Either it's supposed to be this like character fall of like, the scientist who took a risk, but he's evil, so then he got killed by his own hubris. Or it's Norman being like, let's kill Spider-Man, wink, but he really knows that Spider-Man will dodge it.
That's so good.
And I think it's Norman does kill himself when he knows he's finally lost control and the Goblin and him are one, and there's no way out of it, and he's like begging Peter to save him. I think that's real. I think he's like, please, you have to save me. And when he knows that Spider-Man can't save him, he's like, the only thing I can do is kill myself.
Yeah.
And that's why he goes to him, save me. I was a father to you, be a son to me now. And when Peter's like, I did have a father, his name was Ben Parker. Then all dropped. Norman's gone. Godspeed, Spider-Man. That's the Goblin. But I think the way that the glider was set up, Norman knew.
Yeah.
And the Goblin didn't, but the Goblin thought that Norman had finally joined sides with him.
Yeah.
And to stop fighting him. But I think that's real, and that's why Norman comes out at the very end. And I think Goblin and Norman go, at the same time, because the Goblin realizes that Norman betrayed him, and Norman realizes he really is going to die.
Yeah.
And then and his last words are like, "Don't tell Harry." And that's Norman talking.
That's Norman.
I think Goblin is gone. Goblin dies when Norman betrays him. And then his last lines are "Don't tell Harry." I think that is beautiful, by the way. I think Norman's story is a father who fails but in the end succeeds, but his son will never know.
Yeah.
I think it's a tragic story of like of Harry's father losing battles that Harry can't see, but in the end, Norman wins, and Norman is, in his last moments, a good man and a good father. But Harry will never know that. Only Peter will know that, and I think that's a tragedy. I think this movie is devastatingly sad. Like Ben, Norman, the way they did MJ. No, but that's all I want to say.
Yeah, that's really good. That's super, super good.
Yeah.
I also just want to give a shout out to Willem Dafoe's eyes. acting when your entire face is obstructed by the giant ass goblin mask.
Yeah.
But when they put the little visor up and you can see him
his
talking and
eyes.
his bugged out eyes. That's like a fucking highlight of this movie for me.
Also, shout
Willem
out
Dafoe's
to
bugged out eyes.
Yeah. Shout out to J.K. Simmons for being the
I want to
most
talk about
iconic
him.
JJ.
I want to talk about him next. Let's
Okay,
talk about JJ.
go.
Let's talk about JJ. All right, so I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you want to take a second?
No. Go. Ask your question.
Okay, my question for you is, how do you think that J. Jonah Jameson, as a character, has aged in this era of like Alex Jones and like biased news sources and fake reporters and all of that?
I think they totally lean into that, obviously, in the new movies. Because literally he starts out in his basement and he's like, Spider-Man's a fraud!
Yeah.
But then he becomes a huge success because he's like, Spider-Man's a fraud! And it's totally meant to be like an allegory for Alex Jones.
Yeah.
100%. I think, though, in this movie, he's just an actually good reporter. I think he's a very good reporter. I think he's a hard-ass reporter. But I think that's, like, what you have to be in New York and, like, as an executive of a newspaper company. Like, he always strives for the truth, and he truly believes that Spider-Man is bad for the city. Just as much as he thinks Green Goblin is bad, he thinks Spider-Man is bad. And I think that's obviously what his character is supposed to be. But I think, though, in the new Spider-Mans, I think he would be a dick. But in this one, he's almost killed by the Green Goblin. And when Green Goblin asks who sends in the pictures, he says, I don't know. He sends his stuff in the mail. And he doesn't know. Like, he could die. He could easily be killed, but he's protecting Peter with what could be his last breaths.
Yeah.
And he's lying to this guy who just blew up his office. And I think that shows the character of J. Jonah Jameson, is that he is a good, honest person. He's just a dick to everyone because he's a boss and he has to be hard.
I think we see J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson is the pinnacle of this movie.
Yeah.
He is
the perfect
the
casting.
Peak. He is everything.
Yes.
And he is also one of the things that I most remember about this movie, thinking back on it.
He's only in 2 scenes, excuse me.
Yeah, he doesn't get that much screen time,
in,
but
2
God,
scenes.
he eats it up.
God, no. He's
And
iconic.
Yeah, and so I agree. I think we really see his actual morals in that he
Goblin scene.
Yeah, and that he protects Peter, and he does it without thinking. And every single one of his lines is just off the fucking dome. He's just the most quick-witted, multitasking guy, and he's just all over the place because he has to be. And so the fact that he doesn't think for a fucking second before telling that lie is that's how he truly feels. And he's really no bullshit. Which I gotta respect.
Yeah, he's no
the man.
bullshit either in a mean way or in an honest, truthful way that is really good.
Yeah.
And I think both are really good.
Yeah. And I think too that I think it's interesting what you say that he thinks that he genuinely believes that Spider-Man is a villain, because I think that's an interesting take, because it's really easy to go, oh, he's spreading misinformation, because that's what's the most sort of accessible interpretation in this day and age, I feel is you see a news reporter like that and you
Who's
go,
making up BS.
okay, this guy is clearly a bigot who is saying shit for attention and he's he's very problematic in that way. But I think it's really a better and much more true to this era, to the early 2000s, to interpret it as he genuinely is just kind of dumb. God, he fucking eats it up.
Yeah.
I fucking love him so much.
So much.
And also, he clearly doesn't have time for critical thinking.
No.
He does not have time to sit down and think about anything, ever.
He just is assaulted with shit in his office all the time.
And so, the fact that he doesn't have time to sit and critically think about what he thinks about Spider-Man and what could actually be going on, all he has time to do is run his business. And I don't think that's a good excuse for being misinformed and spreading misinformation, obviously.
I think that shit that Spider-Man does is bad though sometimes. I think he has a fair justification. I think he takes it way too far, but I think having a bad opinion about Spider-Man isn't inherently wrong. That's just my hot take. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I mean, I did, but
yeah. I think that's about it. I think he's great. And I think he's going into this, I was thinking about the whole Alex Jones thing, and I was like, God damn it, I remember fucking loving this character, and is it gonna be ruined for me? But you just love him. You just have to love him.
He's awesome.
There's nothing you could do to hate him.
There's such a difference between the JJ that we know in the new movies and the JJ we knew in the old movies. And as much as I think the JJ in the new movies interpretation is accurate, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It makes you hate JJ.
I want to root for him.
Yeah.
I really do. I want to Oh, okay, another thing I was going to say is, that kind of shows that he's actually a good person.
Yeah.
Is right before the Green Goblin attack, he and Peter are just kind of sitting around shooting the shit. It's all, I think, I could be wrong, but I feel like it's maybe the only time where they don't get constantly interrupted, where there's not 4 people in his office.
I trust my barber.
Yeah,
whole
it's
thing.
just him and Peter.
Yeah.
or at least for like a substantial amount of dialogue, it's just him and Peter.
Which for The
is-
Office is
right.
insane.
Right.
Like a minute alone is like insane.
Yeah, and so they're just like talking to each other, and basically Peter's like, well, you can't say that, that's slander. And he has that funny line about, no, if it's in print, it's libel.
That's libel.
Libel, yeah.
I take that. I offense to that. I
Yeah.
take offense to that.
Which is kind of like very self-aware, but also very witty.
Yeah.
That he's like, yeah, I'm probably saying bullshit, but it sells papers, and
That's my main concern is running a business.
he's not the fucking New York Times. He's like,
He's the Bugle. The Bugle is the New York Times in this timeline.
Oh, it is?
I mean, yeah.
I got the impression that he was kind of more of a, like, what would you call it? Like a tabloid paper?
He's the
Because-
New York Times, but the New York Times is more tabloidy in this universe.
I think
Kinda.
of it as like a tabloid, like celebrity news kind of clickbaity like paper.
Yeah.
Because they say we got like Jennifer Aniston in a thong or whatever they say.
Yeah.
Not Jennifer Aniston. They say something about, oh well, on our front page we caught like so and so celebrity in a thong, and it's like, that's your fucking front page. Like clearly this outlet is already supposed to be sort of like for celeb news and like
Yeah.
kind of fun.
It's
know,
whatever
not really news
whatever
news.
sells will go into his paper.
Right, which I think is a huge distinction between him and like Fox News and other sources that are genuinely spreading like hate and misinformation, is that those label themselves as like actual news sources, whereas I get the impression, at least, that the Daily Bugle is you go into reading it knowing that it's just going to be like tabloid celebrity gossip stuff.
Here's the thing: the Daily Bugle is meant to be the New York Times. It's meant to be like the newspaper of New York.
That's fair. I think that Jameson is a registered Republican, but like politically sort of like moderate and like kind of more leftist. Like, I think he's a registered Republican because
But
he
he
was
votes-
raised Republican,
But he
he's
votes
kind of
Democrat
like,
too.
yeah, he's kind of like actually pretty liberal.
Yeah, I think so.
Overall.
And I think he's Republican because he cares about his business.
Yeah, exactly. He's Republican as a business owner.
But as like a human being, he's
but
a little
but
bit more.
he's actually like pretty cool. Regardless, we need to end the podcast.
Yeah.
now.
Oh my God.
But that was Spider-Man.
That was Spidey. We never actually talked about Spidey. We talked about everyone except Spider-Man.
Sure, we did. We talked about how we talked about it. We just didn't do.
We talked
whole,
about
like,
Ben, MJ, Harry to an extent, Norman, and JJ, but we never talked about Peter.
I think that we don't have any like hot takes about Peter that we need to debate.
Yeah, he's
about,
He's
though.
pretty just average good. Like he's just a good character all around.
I just love him.
Yeah.
Immensely.
I love him a lot.
and I think we talked about him plenty.
I don't think there's really anything I can judge about him except for like sometimes he's a little bit of a weirdo, but that's just because he's an awkward nerd.
Mm-hmm.
So like whatever.
Um,
That's my hot take on Peter Parker. He's a nerd.
Yeah. So, I guess that's about it for us.
Yeah. Bye.
This has been Tough Love, our film review cast.
I've had a blast. This was
yeah.
an amazing first episode.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. So, you can listen to us on Spotify and YouTube and Anchor at Tough Love Film Review Cast is what it's called on all of those platforms. If you have a film that you would like us to watch and talk about, you can email us at toughlovepod1@gmail.com or just send us... What?
I didn't realize we had this whole like podcast network we're setting up. I thought this was just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, dude.
Damn, are we getting some merch?
Maybe.
All right.
Email
fuck
us
yeah.
if you want our merch.
Yeah, email us if you want our merch, and we'll get back to you in like 2 years.
Email us what movies you want us to watch, and email us anything else you'd like us to know. And
Oh, we're gonna be reviewing Call Me by Your Name
yep,
next.
next week is Call Me
Which,
by Your Name.
Sorry about the whiplash for movie reviews. We went from Spider-Man to Call Me by Your Name.
I
but-
think that's very telling of what
Yeah.
the show is going to be like, though. So stay tuned for that, and take care out there.
Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Woo.
Straight, cause I